read that this particular game was the third highest scoring game in league history. Didn't we have a game recently that was like the second highest scoring game? Oh, it was the Mystics 4 overtime game. Was like the second highest scoring game in league history. 123 to 88 is, that doesn't even send the total over in most NBA games. But the NBA games are 48 minutes and these games are 40 minutes. But last night in the game, Caitlin Clark scored 27 points and had 11 assists in just 27 minutes. She also got hit with her 7th technical foul of the season. The next one is a 1-game suspension. She got fouled, and when she threw the ball to the ref, the player that she was arguing with said something, and Caitlin said, scoreboard, because they were routing Connecticut at that point. She got hit with a tech for that. I don't know. But anyway, the number of WNBA players in the history of that league to score 25-plus and have 10-plus assists in under 30 minutes, there are now 2 performances where that has happened. Just 2 performances. Last night, and a game that I didn't mention, but I wrote down as I got to mention this. It was when I was away the week before last, when Caitlin Clark scored 45 points and had 10 assists for the first 40-10 game in WNBA history. This was on July 17th. So I guess, I was back, wasn't I? I think I was back. Yeah, it was a week ago. It would have been last Friday night. July 17th, last Friday night, in Indiana's 110-107 win over Seattle. Caitlin Clark scored 45 points and had 10 assists. It was the first 40-10 game in WNBA history. But the most amazing part of that performance, in which she went 11 of 18 from the floor, 6 of 10 from behind the arc, 17 of 19 from the free throw line. She had 10 assists. She also had 4 steals and 2 blocked shots in the game. She did it in 29 minutes. She only played 29 minutes and scored 45 points. I tried to look up the most points in the fewest amount of minutes in NBA history, and I could not find anything that resembled something like 45 in less than 30. That seems like a very, very rare feat that was not written about in the actual write-up about the game. The focus was this being the first 40-10 game in WNBA history. She's also the fastest player in WNBA history to make 200 career three-pointers. She's setting records pretty much every time she goes out there. I know some of you will push back and say, she's not that good. Yeah, okay. 45 and 10 in 29 minutes. Stop, okay? I know basketball. You can stop with the anti-Caitlin Clark stuff. She's, one of the 25 best, maybe. She's, barely all-star capability. No. All right? This is the second time in league history somebody's gone for 25 plus and 10 plus and less than 30. But that is insane. Does that seem insane to you, Max? 45 points in 29 minutes?
Yeah, that's a lot. Kev. That's just a lot of points.
That's like, to me, like, it strikes me as if it's been done before, we're talking about on one hand, you can count the performances of 45 or more in less than 30 minutes of playing. That's what it seems like to me. If you guys find some box scores with Jordan or, Gervin or any of the all-time, a Harden game, whatever, in less than 30 for 45 or more, send it to me. That seems like a very hard thing to do and very rare. It seems like to me. Anyway, she continues to get bounced around a lot in the WNBA. The game last night was on TV. my wife caught me watching it. And she said, "You're actually not watching a WNBA game." And I said, "No, I'm watching Caitlin Clark play." But she does play in the WNBA, and it was a WNBA game. My wife didn't care. She was just surprised. She wasn't knocking me. She was just surprised. I mean, what else was on TV last night? And I just stumbled upon it, and I watched her for a little bit. I missed the technical foul. I think that came in the second half. Look, she complains a lot. She gets bumped around. She gets targeted a lot. She's fighting back a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. 45, though, in 29 minutes, along with 10 assists, just seems insane for me. She's really good. And she's, obviously the biggest needle mover in sports in terms of taking a league from where it was to now where it is. This is what Tiger Woods did to golf. I'm not putting it on the same level I'm talking about the incremental gain in fans, in sponsors, in revenue. That's what I'm talking about. It is comparable to T. Woods, what she's done in terms of percentage increase. Maybe somebody can send me what they have on 45 and 10 in less than 30 minutes. Doesn't seem like it's been done very much. All right, back to the Nats real quickly, and their 8-0 win over Colorado. A game in which manager Blake Butera said it was extremely important to get that win. It was their second straight series win coming out of the break. They took 2 of 3 from the A's on the road, and now they took 2 of 3 from the Rockies. My God, CJ Abrams is just on absolute fire. He is on a heater like you read about. 4 for 5 last night, 2 for 3 the night before with 2 homers. 2 for 4 in the A's wrap-up game with a home run. He's got 4 homers in the last 4 games. And he was on base last night 5 times. 5 times. Walked as well. They've got just a ridiculous offensive baseball team. Nobody saw this coming, obviously, but it's no longer like, let's let it play out. No, we're into the final stretch. We're into the final, 59 games. Where are they right now? They're back to 1 game over 500. They're 52 and 51 and so they played 103. So we got 59 games left. This is who they are. They're the highest scoring team in baseball. Highest scoring team in baseball. They currently sit a game and a half behind Arizona for the 3rd wild card spot. And guess who they play tomorrow night and for the weekend? At home, Arizona coming to town. So a big series coming up. So this is what Blake Butera said about why he felt it was extremely important for the Nats to beat Colorado yesterday. This was from Spencer Nussbaum, who covers the team for The Athletic. Quote, I just had that feeling. I mean, we're sitting here. Obviously, we know the standings. Everyone in the clubhouse knows the standings. We know the trade deadline is around the corner. It's on TV every day. People are talking about playoffs, trade deadline, buyers, sellers, all those different types of things. And I know this is the first time in a while that a lot of these guys have played meaningful baseball here late in July, hopefully going into August. So we're having fun with this. Yes, it's interesting because before the game yesterday, I kind of felt like, because Colorado's terrible, and they lost the game on Tuesday night with the late home run given up, and they lost that game 8-7. And it would have felt, had they fallen basically a game below 500 after losing a series to the lowly Rockies, it would have been a feeling that, this isn't really real. But now you stack up back-to-back series, 2 of 3 from the A's, 2 of 3 from the Rockies, and you got a chance maybe to get 2 or 3 against Arizona over the weekend. Then you'll play a last-place team in Toronto at home. early next week. And then comes a stretch. Atlanta on the road for 4, Philly on the road for 4. An 8-game stretch right around the trade deadline starts next Thursday night. Braves on the road for 4 games, and then Philly on the road for 4 games. And then, by the way, after that, it's not that it gets that easy. They have Cincinnati, but then they get the Cubs. So the schedule, I looked it up yesterday. It's the 17th most difficult. So it's not even in the top half of the league in baseball of remaining schedule strength. It's the 17th most difficult, or putting it another way, the 13th easiest left. But they do have a rough stretch coming up. This series with the Diamondbacks, and then they've got 8 straight games against Atlanta and Philadelphia on the road. For those not following it, Atlanta is the NL East leader right now, and Philly is in second in the NL East. So I understand where he's coming from. Yesterday would have felt like a bad loss. Cade Cavalli, outstanding yesterday. They've got 2 solid starting pitchers. This is why, like, if they get into one of those short wild card series, as a 6 versus a 3, and who would the 3 be? It'll probably be Atlanta at this point. The NL East winner will be the 3 seed, because the Brewers and Dodgers are having themselves really good seasons right now with the 2 best records in baseball. So they're going to be the top 2. They're going to sit that first round, 3-6, 4-5 in a short series. So Washington would be able to throw 2 decent starting pitchers in a short series, Cavalli and Foster Griffin, depending on how it plays out at the end of the regular season. Because if they need those games to get the 6 seed, those guys might not be available. But offensively, they're going to scare some people. They're legit. That would be fun. A little bit of October baseball with the Nats back involved for the first time since 2019. I mean, they haven't sniffed, obviously, the postseason since winning the World Series in 2019. We'll never know what 2020 could have been in terms of a follow-up to 2019 because of the shortened season due to COVID. All right. There's something I want to get to that I thought was really interesting that somebody sent me on social media, and it has to do with players that have divided the fan base. And I'm talking about players on the current roster. We'll get to that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. G helping me out. G from the shop. Klay Thompson delivered one of the most efficient scoring performances in NBA history. He scored 60 points in just 29 minutes. That's insane.
11 dribbles, Kevin. 11
dribbles against the Pacers. So there was a lot of catching and shooting. I mean, which, by the way, he was so good at. December 5th, 2016. Thank you for that, G. Yeah, and you found one too. Paul George didn't score 45 plus in less than 30 minutes like Caitlin Clark did last week, but Paul George scored 37 in 20 minutes. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Because at that rate, another basically 9 minutes, and he would have had another 18 points, 18 and a half points. So put him at 55 plus in 29 minutes at that pace. Now, he didn't get to the 45 and 10. What did Klay Thompson, go pull up the box score, December 5th, 2016, Klay Thompson, see how many assists he had. Because she had 10 assists with the 45 points in 29 minutes, which is insane.
Klay, that's not the page that I wanted.
You'll find it. Let me just read something real quickly before I get to what I want to talk about football team-wise. From The Real Tundy, one thing about Kevin Sheehan, he's guaranteed to never see anything he'd rather not talk about. Really? Argentina players started a post-game fracas. They turned their backs to the presentation. Kevin definitely didn't see it, didn't read about it. Racial attacks? Hell no. Were there racial attacks in the World Cup final? Because if there were, I did not see it, and I did not read about it, and I did not hear about it. So help me with that one at Real Tundy. I absolutely talked about the post-game fracas, my friend, Governor. I talked about the post-game fracas not being much of a fracas. It was some pushing and shoving. Come on. I guess for soccer, that's, that actually constitutes a melee with a guy getting pushed to the ground. I made fun of the post-game fracas. Now, I will tell you that Tommy yesterday on the podcast told me about the Argentina team turning their backs during the presentation. I was at the game. I did not see that. I didn't. Of course I would have talked about that. Why would I have avoided that? Turning their backs. That's reprehensible. It's classless. I love attacking classless and reprehensible. So I don't know what you're talking about. But in terms of racial attacks at the World Cup final, what's he talking about? The only thing I could find was early in the tournament, there's some YouTube guy who made racial remarks during Argentina's 3-2 win over Cape Verde.
So I think racial remarks were made at him.
At him,
yeah,
my fault.
Because
from Argentina fans?
Yeah, well, Argentina's I think they're one of the only teams in the World Cup with no black players on it, and Argentina has
Argentina's got a cultural history of racism. There are several countries in that tournament that have that. Spain, by the way, has some of that. But I did not see anything in the game itself and did not read about anything in the game itself.
Nor have I.
So I don't know what he's talking about. And of course, I mean, please, you must not listen very much. Keep sending, by the way, though, the 45 and 10s in less than 30 minutes. Because I think what Caitlin Clark did last Friday night seems like a major, rare outlier for an NBA player. Obviously, she's the only player in WNBA history to go for 25 and 10 or more in less than 30 minutes, and she's now done it twice in the span of 6 days. So somebody sent this to me, and I thought it was really interesting. The person that tweeted this question out is at Red Zone in the Lab. And he posed the question, who are we as a Commanders fan base most divided by? And he gave 4 answers for people to choose from. I mean, they're good ones. Ben Sinnott, there's some division among fans on Ben Sinnott. Luke McCaffrey, there's definitely some division on Luke McCaffrey. Although I would say with both of those players right now, it's less divided, at least in half, and more tilted towards feeling like they got it wrong on both players. He writes Mikey Sanders still. And then the last answer is the group that says everything we need is in the room. There is that part of the fan base that will just say, we don't need anything. We've got Sam Howell. We should trade back. We should build around Sam Howell, or we should build around Taylor Heineke. Don't take Jaden Daniels or Drake May or anybody like that. I like the premise because I think it's a good question to ask. But I think I think there are players. Look, I think the all-time divided on a player, all-time for our fan base. I know that RG3, because he's been in the news recently, we talked about his, video over the weekend. The fan base was never divided on him until it became obvious that things about him weren't the things that we thought existed with him. I think Kirk Cousins is the player that the fan base, at least in recent vintage, call it the last 20 years. He was the player the fan base was most divided on. Because the truth is that I think Kirk Cousins, for some odd reason, has been one of the most polarizing players in the NFL during his career. Because the same stuff that we dealt with, Minnesota dealt with, Atlanta for a much shorter period of time dealt with. And it was always really, I felt, a product of the contracts, a product of the 2 franchise tags, then a product of the multiple massive deals that he signed in Minnesota, and the lack of playoff wins. Minnesota had 1 playoff win. We had a playoff loss with him. Minnesota was 1-2 with him in the postseason. We were 0-1 with him in the postseason. So, but I think Kirk Cousins in the last 20 years, if you want to go back further than that, go ahead. But the question, with the phone lines now open at 301-230-0980, is two-part. Who are we as a Washington fan base most divided by as it relates to the current roster? And then all time, who are we most divided by? Now, I can't take you back to what like when Bobby Mitchell integrated this football team in 1961. I can't take you back to that time. I would bet that he is by far and away the most polarizing player because of the time in franchise history. Based on the time, there are a lot of people that did not want him to integrate this team, and there were a lot of people that did want him to integrate this team. So I'd rather keep it to, the players that most of us remember. Sonny and Billy had this incredible, back and forth, but they were actually beloved a lot more than they were dividing of the fan base. Doug Williams was a fan base unifier. That's the irony of those that injected race into the RG3 conversation, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, 12 years ago, is that this was a franchise that in 1987 had a fan base that preferred like 9-1 Doug Williams over the white quarterback, Jay Schrader. The players did, the coaches did, the media did, the fans did, in what you could probably call a less evolved society in 1987. That's why the conversation about RG3 always bothered me when those wanted to inject race into it. And I'm like, no, you got the wrong town for that. Now, we were the last franchise to integrate, sure, but we also had the first black Super Bowl winning quarterback, and he was the preferred quarterback that year, and then going into the postseason, and then the following season as well. Doug is still one of the more beloved players in franchise history. So there was no division really on Doug Williams. We've had quarterback debates, obviously, the big ones like Billy and Sonny, and then the other ones like Beck and Grossman. But in terms of just one player by himself, where the fan base was most divided on that player, who is it on the current roster and who is it all time? Maybe it's recency bias, but my God, every single day, 2015, 2016, 2017, and then beyond, Kirk Cousins was easily the most polarizing player in town by far. When I had him on a few months back, I asked him why he thinks he recognized that he's been and has been a controversial and a polarizing player, even though inside the walls of every building he's been in, the players and the coaches love him, adore him, respect him. And he's been an excellent player, not an elite player, but he's been an excellent player during the course of his career. He's been very good. But the winning hasn't followed in the postseason, so that's that's what he felt like. He felt like, look, the bottom line is my contracts and then the lack of, playoff success. And I think that's where it was, where people either thought he sucked or they thought he was great. There was some in between, for sure. If you were reasonable, there was some in between. I thought he was very good. I never thought he was elite, but I certainly always believed him to be a top half of the league starting quarterback. And I was right about that during those years because he absolutely was. And you could win with a Kirk Cousins. I'm not going to get into it, but in terms of why the winning didn't follow, there's a lot of reasons, but look it up. He basically played on some of the worst defensive teams in Washington and in Minnesota that a quarterback's ever had in stretches. All right, so that's the two-part question. Part one, who are we as a fan base most divided by player-wise on the current roster? And then all-time. 301-230-0980. I'll give you my answers when we come back. I want yours. Phone lines are open. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch this show on our Team 980 YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. Okay. Some of you have already tweeted in some good answers that I wasn't thinking about. And yes, I think we have to consider some coaches too, because Mike Shanahan would certainly be a guy where the fan base was divided for sure in the moment. Jim Zorn, we were not divided. We were all in unison on Jim Zorn. Jay Gruden, there was some division on Jay Gruden, no doubt. And then Rivera, there was some division on to begin with, and then it tilted pretty much. Let's get ourselves a new GM and a new coach soon. But the question, and I want to give at Red Zone in the Lab credit for this because I liked it. He posted on X. He wrote, "Who are we as a Commanders fan base most divided by?" And he focused on the current roster. And the options were Ben Sinnott, Luke McCaffrey, Mikey Sanderstill. And then everything we need is in the room. You know, that sentiment, because there are, I don't know if it's a divided thing, but they're definitely, and I've dealt with this for years, and it hasn't even mattered, this situation with the team. Some are just hell-bent on, I like what we have. Let's just keep adding. Let's build it, one block at a time, and we'll get there. And that really, really became a big, big part of the lead up to the 2024 draft. There were a lot of you who were absolutely convinced that Sam Howell was good enough to build around, as long as they got a new offensive coordinator, new head coach, etc. All right. So for me, I look at, for me, it's, some of you have tweeted in some really good ones. I think I can't find anybody that was more polarizing, that the fan base was more divided on, than Kirk Cousins. Because RG3, the fan base was not divided on him at all in 2012, and really at all in 2013. Even though we were obviously starting to get, we were starting to sniff out what he was in that locker room and with the coaches and the self-absorption, the whole thing. I mean, the All-In for Week 1, the documentary executive produced by himself in that offseason was a bit much, and the hashtagging of every single thing, trying to get patents on different things. The whole thing was just a bit much as he's battling back from that injury. But he didn't become dividing until probably late in 2013, 2014. It would probably be more Jay's first year when he was still the starting quarterback. And then Jay obviously quickly realized that it wasn't going to work with him. I think Cousins, in terms of just a constant fan base being divided, 15, 16, I mean, we had 3 years. And then in the off seasons in each one of them, because of the contract stuff, as Galdi used to call it, the cha-cha-cha of Kirk Cousins' contract conversation. LeVar Arrington is in that conversation. Steve tweeted, LeVar #1 all time. So much talent, but so little production divided the fan base. Look, the little production with LeVar was because he was injured a lot. I've said this about LeVar Arrington many times in the past. If Marty Schottenheimer had remained the head coach, look, maybe the injuries continue to happen, and that's the unfortunate part of LeVar's professional career, is that he could never stay healthy. But in terms of the kind of player he was in 2001, he was so good. So good. And he would have gotten so much better under a coach like Marty Schottenheimer. I think LeVar has said that before. I think LeVar has admitted, had Marty stayed on as the coach, he would have had his best chance to succeed here. He knew what Snyder was and how bad the organization was and the cesspool that it had turned into, and he got out of it, but he just couldn't stay healthy. But I agree that during LeVar's days here, there was a lot of division on him. Somebody wrote in, I'll save these. Maybe you guys will cover them in the call. Now, in terms of the current roster, let me just tell you, this is personal and I don't project this on everybody else, but man, have I had it out with so many of you over the last few years over Terry. And it's not because I don't think Terry's good. It's because I don't think Terry is an elite receiver. I don't think he was an elite receiver. I don't think he is an elite receiver. Many of you have thought that we can't do better than Terry. He's great. He's an elite level, top 5, no worse than top 10 receiver. And I have always felt he's outside that group, but really good. But the fan base isn't divided on Terry. Everybody thinks Terry's good and good for the organization, for sure. Some just think he's great, and others think he's good. I actually like the list that at Red Zone in the Lab put together, because I do think that the fan base is a little bit divided, although maybe tilting more negatively on Sinnott and McCaffrey. But I'm going to throw one more in here. And I know it's super early on this because he's only played 1 year. But I think that there's some division on Bill, on Krosky Merritt. I think there are many people that think this guy's going to be a star running back. And the other half thinks we got to do better at running back. So I think I'd include him. I mean, 1 season in the books. And I thought about Duran, but I don't even know what Duran is to anybody anymore. This is going to be his final year here, more likely than not. I am really hoping, fingers crossed, because the last time he was in a contract year, he had his best season. He's not too old to be a dominant player. Last year was at best, an inconsistent season. And let me just say, I feel very strongly that had there been any kind of market for Duran, he wouldn't be here. I just don't think there was a market for him. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. The player that the fan base is most divided by on the current roster, and then all time. Max, what are your answers before we get to the calls?
All time is tough for me, just because, I mean, I was so young during those, like the LeVar Arrington draft and all of that. But one guy that I do feel like everybody is still kind of divided on, first round pick for the Washington Commanders, or was it the football team at the time? Chase Young, I think. He was, when he came in and he had a good first year and didn't really build off of it too much. But now that he's playing really well in New Orleans, a lot of people kind of wanted to give him another look in this offseason, or when he was available 1 or 2 off seasons ago. So Chase Young would be that guy in my mind, just not delivering and then going elsewhere and still playing well.
I think that's a pretty good one. I think Chase Young, first of all, drafting Chase Young, the fan base was divided on to a certain degree because some people wanted quarterback there. There are several callers who have called in that have sworn, and I believe them, that they were Justin Herbert, people. Yeah. Or Tua people, at number 2. Justin Herbert would have looked much better than Chase Young, obviously, at number 2 if you redraft there. But yeah, look, he had a great rookie season, and then injuries, and I think the overall approach he took professionally wasn't up to snuff anyway. All right, what about current roster?
Current roster, I can make a case for a couple of guys. I mean, you mentioned Bill. Nick Allegretti's one that I think people are kind of divided by because we don't really know what he's going to be doing, or we don't know if he can play center. But on the other side of the ball, I think honestly, Quan Martin is a guy that a lot of people are divided on because Dan Quinn really hyped him up coming into last season, and it was a dud. And he was coming off of a pretty decent year, hoping to kind of catapult and go a little bit further, but we're still kind of waiting on it. So Quan Martin would be one of those guys. Johnny Newton's another going into year 3. People haven't seen a ton, but he was really rehabbing in his first year. Yeah. And then second season, he's kind of finding his groove, getting a little bit more confidence that he can play in the NFL. So I'm excited to see what he can do in year 3, but I feel like people are a little bit divided on him as well.
All right, we got phone lines open at 301-230-0980. If you want to weigh in on the player that the fan base was most divided over all time, and then on the current roster? Ian's first up. Go ahead.
Historically, I think you nailed it. Shanahan, Kirk Cousins, and on the tail end, like the mid-tail end of RG3 were the most hotly contested sports radio calls. I was obviously very anti-Shanahan, and I remember our calls back and forth then. On the current roster, I'll add a new person that you didn't say. I think there's a lot of division on Adam Peters. You know my opinion on him. I think Quinn maybe a little bit less. I think Quinn is very likable and there, but no one's looking at him as some elite coach. But I think there's a lot of questions around
I don't
Peters.
sense any division on Adam Peters. Literally none. I think you're the only caller that has
I think
reservations about Adam Peters. I think Dan Quinn, there is definitely some divided opinion on Dan Quinn right now. No doubt. Not on Adam Peters. I'm pretty good at taking the pulse of this fan base. There is absolutely no legitimate division over Adam Peters. The way I feel right now. Dan Quinn's different. Because there is an actual record attached to Dan Quinn's head coaching career, and a lot of people will point to that and say we hired average, and he's been average at 12-5 and then 5-12.
My point.
Yeah,
that's been my point with
I know it
Dan
is.
Quinn, but I think there is more division on Adam Peters. If you ran a poll on your Twitter site or something, I don't think it'd be 50-50 or 60-40, but I think there's more division, and I think there will be more division coming this year.
Let me just say, here's the thing you'd need to look for. All right. The response wouldn't be as passionate about Adam Peters, no matter where the numbers played out. The response associated with Dan Quinn would be much more passionate. The numbers would be much greater of people that feel something about Dan Quinn. Adam Peters hasn't been here long enough for people to feel enough, or enough people to feel. Some people are quick trigger, like you, all right? Even though their very first season, they nearly went to the Super Bowl, and then their second season, they were decimated by injuries. But I think most people would take a step back and say, oh, wait a minute, let's give him time. The cupboard was bare, etc. Quinn's got much more of a track record, and I think the feel on Quinn would be more passionate one way or the other. I just don't think I'd be able to generate a lot of passion for Peters one way or the other right now like I could for Quinn.
Yeah, I do agree with you on the track record for Quinn and more people having an opinion. The reason I'd say it's going to be more negative on Peters is when you see the team this year with the 31st ranked tight ends and wide receivers in the 32nd ranked running back room. I think people are like, why haven't we done better? So I think you would generate.
Well, we know why. We know why they haven't done better, right? I mean, we've covered this ground. We've covered this ground. They tried. Jeremiah Love probably would have been a pick. They went out and signed a running back. They certainly tried to sign two of the best receivers in free agency, and they didn't sign those guys. And maybe they would have selected Carnell Tate had Tate fallen to 7. We don't, but again, like I've done this with you too many times, so it's getting boring. But they signed more new players than any team in the league, 17, and they spent top 3 money in free agency, and they tried to spend a lot more and add more players. So it's not a one-way decision. Yeah. You know this. It takes 2 in free agency.
Yeah, but that brings up, and I've said this to you before, that brings up the question of why aren't they coming? If Jaden Daniels...
Well, they are. 17 came. More than any team in the league. 17 players. New players signed with this team. Number 1 in the league.
Mediocre players.
Well, first of all, that's your opinion. Odafe Owe got a 4-year, $100 million deal, and there was definite competition for him. There was definite competition for Chenal. There was a definite competition for Chason. We saw that as part of the draft. Same thing with Cross. Same thing with Chig. So it's not like, there wasn't competition for many of the players that ended up signing here. You can't say that why aren't they desired, and they've got the number 1 count in new players in the league through free agency. because it wasn't like
Yeah.
they overpaid everybody. It's not like they had to offer, all these players outrageous contracts like Snyder used to have to do. So,
Is it, Kevin, doesn't it give you pause that despite adding the most players, like you said, and spending the third most amount of money, every analyst group, Vegas over under, everywhere, has this as a mediocre non-playoff team? That
No.
should tell you the guys they added aren't good enough.
No, it doesn't give me pause at all. Because last
Okay,
year,
well,
New
we'll
England added more new players than any team in the league and had an over-under of 7.5, and nobody expected anything from them. By the way, nobody
they
expected
have a-
anything from Seattle either, with an over-under number at 7.5. It's the NFL. Things change. It's incredibly dynamic, as you know. Yes, it's fun to look at these lists and consider what others around the league are saying about players and teams and position groups and all that, especially this time of year. But I have no idea what's going to happen in 2026, nor do you, nor do most people. Does the roster look just absolutely killer on paper? It doesn't. But they tried to make it look more killer than it is. I think defensively, they've added a lot of good players. They've added a lot of good players defensively. Maybe not an elite player, but they've added a lot of good players to an area that needed players, good players. But we'll see. Maybe they ended up killing it in the draft with Styles and Williams with the first two picks. I got to run. If you're on hold, Cyrus, Billy, Mark, we've got a line open if you want to weigh in on players right now who make the fan base most divided on current players, and then all time. Who's the player all time that the fan base was most divided on? I think Kirk Cousins was the most divided we've ever been on a player as a fan base. And then currently on the roster, I think that's a harder one, but there are a couple of possibilities. Sinnott and McCaffrey and Sanders still, and maybe even Bill, and maybe even Allegretti. That's a harder question because, there's a lot of unknown just in general. But, in the granular conversations, detail-wise, that we have about our football team, some of you sense the division on certain players. I will admit, by the way, in kind of thinking this through, I don't want to lose this thought. We'll get to the break in a moment, Max. When we're talking about the current roster and fans being divided on players like Sinnott and Luke McCaffrey, we're talking about the portion of the fan base that is not the majority, that pays attention to all of this stuff. It's not the big macro topics where you appeal to the masses in the fan base. I've said this many times. This time of year, a lot of you really get into it, and I'm glad. And I'm happy about it. But the majority of Redskin Commanders fans, they don't start to pay attention until post-Labor Day. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Totally different subject for just 30 seconds. Did anybody see the highlight of the MLS game played between Miami and Chicago last night? I think it was the first MLS game since the World Cup?
I don't know if it was the first one back, but I do know it was Inter Miami's first game back from the World Cup break.
Miami is the name of the team? That's the team that Messi is on, right?
Correct.
Messi didn't play last night, so I guess he's taking some nights off. But the goaltender, or the goalie, I guess, is the proper way to describe the player for Inter Miami. His name is Rocco Rios Novo. He literally let a ball that was barely kicked in his direction go underneath his legs and into the goal. This is the MLS's first impression post-World Cup. Not too good. Not too good. I mean, I'm sure things like that happen occasionally. All I would say is the timing of it being the first game post-World Cup, you're watching the MLS and the goalie lets the ball go under his legs. It was just kicked back to him like it was a normal, like just soft kick, and it just went under his legs and into the goal.
It's a light pass.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, not the same. The soccer championship on Sunday, much different than the MLS. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. The question posed by @RedZone in the Lab on X, who are we as a fan base most divided by? And he focused on players on the roster and gave out some examples: Ben Sinnott, Luke McCaffrey, Mikey Sanders-Still. I added to the question a part two: who are we as a fan base? Who were we as a fan base most divided by all time franchise? My answers are Kirk Cousins in terms of the all-time dividable, polarizing player in franchise history. I just don't think we ever had conversations like those surrounding him. And then on the current roster, I like some of those. Sinnott, McCaffrey. Look, where am I on those players? It's too early. 2 years and 2 seasons, not enough time for a true evaluation of whether or not they got it right or wrong in the draft. It's not promising at this point, but Sinnott's going to have a new role in the David Blau offense. McCaffrey could emerge as something. Look, McCaffrey emerged last year as an excellent kickoff returner. And then Sanders still great year 1, not very good year 2. We'll see. I mean, I threw Bill into the conversation. I just have a sense that half of you are like, oh, he's great. And the other half are like, we got to do better at running back. So 2-part. Who are we most divided by currently, and who have we been most divided by player-wise? You can throw in coaches, though, if you want, or general managers if you want, historically. Look, Vinny Serrato was not polarizing, okay? The majority of fans wanted him gone. You know, Dan Snyder was not polarizing. Dan Snyder was detested all time. I've said this many times in the past, and it's really not that far off from being true. Take politics, we are the nation's capital, out of the equation. Dan Snyder is the most unpopular DC figure of all time. Name one that was less popular than Dan Snyder, not political figures. So those aren't good answers, Vinny or Dan. They're not good answers. We weren't divided on those guys. We weren't divided on Joe Gibbs for the opposite reason. We weren't divided on Jim Zorn. I'll tell you what, very quickly, we got divided on Mike Shanahan. And you know what side I was on? I was on Dad's side. I was on Mike's side. And I think time has proven that Mike and the staff, which I was a big fan of, and said, really, you want to bail on this? You want to bail on this coach and this offensive coordinator and this staff? Go ahead. Obviously, time has proven me to be right about that one. Yeah. Josh Norman, a friend of mine said, Josh Norman, I think we were divided on Josh Norman. That's probably pretty That's a good one. All right, phone lines. Cyrus, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. I thought about saying Jay Gruden because I think people today are still very divided on his success as a head coach. And I always say, even though one of them wasn't a playoff year, he did put together 2 back-to-back winning seasons, something that we have not seen in quite a while, if we're being extra technical here. You say all the time he was great as a play caller.
He was great as what people around the league said about him was that Jay's one of the best pass offense designers in the league. People really respected his ability to scheme people open in the pass game.
And secretly a good talent evaluator as well. As
Scott McLuhan said the best coach he ever worked with by far in terms of being able to identify talent. That's true.
Right. And then I remember, because I was a kid during his rookie year and the years after before he went to San Francisco, Carlos Rogers would get screamed at when I went to games for dropping the interceptions and pretty much any time he got beat. Mainly because there was so much expected of him, I think. But I remember him, even more so than Josh Norman and D'Angelo Hall, I remember him getting a big brunt of criticism. While there were those that were still
he had boards for hands. He was always there to make the play, but couldn't make the play. And we found out after the fact he had a vision problem. He got LASIK when he went to San Francisco, and he caught everything. So, typical our team couldn't figure out that he had a vision problem. He goes to San Francisco, he gets LASIK, and then he's, picking off everybody left and right. But he literally, he couldn't see the ball apparently.
Right. Yeah. And for today's player, I do want to say Quan Martin is starting to get a little bit more division right now. There are people who still remember the interception return in the playoffs very fondly, but I really wouldn't, go out of my way to judge the players on defense for the past 2 years because I didn't think the scheme was very good. But either way, I still think after the contract dispute, Terry has become, and you've had your dealings with fans about this as well. I think he has become a bit of a divisive topiy for our fan base. I agree that he's not elite. I agree with you that he's not elite. But I think I understand the rift with you and the people that you argue about this. There are people that really value production, and specifically the production that he had with terrible quarterback play.
Right.
And the best analogy I can think of with this is Reggie Wayne. Not that they're similar receivers per se, but Reggie Wayne was never a top 5 receiver sort of talent-wise. None of us would take him over Larry Fitzgerald, Megatron, or even his teammate Marvin Harrison for that matter. But he always put up numbers, and people really, really value production, even though, because you say, I'll take DK Metcalf over Terry any day of the week right now. But DK Metcalf
I haven't said any day of the week on Metcalf. The reason I think, because people really got after me the other day when I said that I would still take Metcalf before Terry. Metcalf is a physically imposing wide receiver. I've seen him take games over. Look, Pittsburgh has to get better offensive line wise. They certainly have a quarterback that can sling it, and those two connected last year. They won a division. I don't know. It's close between the two of them. Look, the Terry thing, I disagree with you. I said it, but I actually believe that he's not a dividing figure. 90% of the fan base or more loves Terry, whether they think he's elite or just good. And so that's not something that we're divided on. No one thinks Terry should be gone. No one thinks Terry stinks. So I think it's a bad example. Thanks for the call, Cyrus, though. The Carlos Rogers thing, and even when you mentioned Jay Gruden, when you mentioned Jay Gruden to me, I think what we have to realize during the Snyder 24-year, reign of terror is that no coach worked. No coach worked. Now, Jim Zorn shouldn't have been a head coach. But to really, evaluate a Mike Shanahan or a Joe Gibbs even, and Joe Gibbs had the most success still had a losing record in the 4 years, but we went to the postseason twice in his 4 years. But nobody was ever going to work with Dan Snyder as the owner. It just wasn't going to happen. Ron Rivera included, especially when he gave Ron Rivera the two-headed job of GM and head coach. So the even with the GMs or whatever, you wanted to call a GM, McLuhan, Bruce. Now, Bruce was part of the problem too. Vinny didn't make most of the bad calls that were made during the time that he had the title of GM. Dan made those calls. Rod, go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Matt, Kevin.
Yeah.
It's crazy enough. I don't believe one play that we're super divided on right now in the current roster.
That's probably fair.
Overall.
Yeah.
Wide receiver 2 overall. I think you got a group of people saying we're good right now, rock with the guys we got, and you got people like myself saying, I've seen what happened when Terry McLaurin gets hurt, and we're not good enough to support Jaden Daniels. There's no way possible you're going to play this season saying, we're going to rely on Terry McLaurin staying healthy to give Jaden Daniels an effective target. We need a wide receiver 2. We need another wide receiver 2. Our guys aren't good enough. And all time, you are now on polar opposite. I think Kirk Cousins is the worst player ever in our history to have that much power. In my opinion, I'm just saying from the contract issue to the play, I think that we had 2 more challenging teams that Kirk Cousins was the reason why we were not challenging for Super Bowls. Being at the games, watching Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon run down the field, butt naked open, and Kirk Cousins just not throw the ball.
You're out of your mind.
Thinking like,
they were top 3 offense in 2016.
Kirk Cousins did so much better. I just think that he was fighting. I think he was sitting there saying
they were terrible defensively. They were literally one of the worst defensive teams. The 2016 defense is the worst 3rd and long defense in modern NFL history. See, we're doing it right now. I love it.
He did the exact same thing. So Kirk Cousins is the issue. You're right. Kirk Cousins is the most. He was the. If we would have got rid of Kirk Cousins and sent him to San Francisco for them 2 first-round picks, I think we'd have been in a better situation.
I agree. They should have done that. Not because Cousins wasn't their best option at quarterback, but because they weren't going to be able to keep him beyond 2017. So you had to trade him at that point.
And I wanted to throw this little caveat in to your last caller. And honestly, on an overall thing, and an all-time thing, not just Kirk Cousins, but the D-line selection, drafting those D-linemen over and over and over again, I almost lost my mind when we drafted.
What do you mean, Allen and Payne back-to-back?
Oh, my goodness. Then drafted Chase Young. I'm like, and then Jamin Davis, I was going crazy. Darwin James was going forward. I'm looking at guys, I'm like, oh, my God. And then people were like, we need D-linemen. I'm like, you're crazy. They're talking about Dallas and all these other teams. Like, you need D-linemen. I'm like, we need playmakers on defense. And I think that right there, maybe not the families, myself, I knew we were going to suck. You can't just have D-linemen and nobody in the back end to make plays. That was crazy.
Well, yeah, remember, they wanted in that 2019 draft, they liked Montez Sweat, which is the guy they traded back into the first round to get. But the Maryland safety, Savage, was the player that they wanted. Right. Yeah, they wanted Darnell Savage. When I say the football people wanted Darnell Savage and would have taken Savage where they took Haskins, which was 15 or 16 in the first round.
Yeah.
If Dan hadn't, jumped into the conversation. By the way, I appreciate your call, and I got to move on and take another call. I love just how we started it on Kirk Cousins again, because that's what it was like during those years. But there isn't none of those receivers that would say, well, receivers always say they're running buck naked and the quarterback's not throwing it to them. But my God, how prolific was that 2016 offensive football team? And look, Kirk benefited from Jordan Reed, Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, etc. Even a guy like Chris Thompson out of the backfield. But Kirk was delivering big time. I mean, the dude threw for nearly 5,000 yards. He broke records that year, was a Pro Bowler that year. He wasn't missing many people. He had a completion percentage. What was it? Hold on, let me pull it up. Yeah. 4,917 yards, 67% completion percentage. They were one of the best offenses in the NFL that entire season. I think only Atlanta's offense, that was the 2016 team with Matt Ryan, with Kyle Shanahan calling plays, was more proficient, but they were terrible defensively. And remember, too, our great kicker, Dustin Hopkins, missed critical kicks in London, against Detroit, and against Dallas on Thanksgiving Day that could have made the difference between a team that went 8-7-1 and probably a team that should have been like 10-5-1, even without that defense. They would have never, had they gotten into the postseason, been a threat because they could not stop anybody that year. Couldn't stop anybody. The 2016 defense, as bad as last year was, and last year's one of the worst defensive teams I can remember in Washington. It's up there. Yeah, by the way, 2024 wasn't very good either. The 2016 defense, the worst 3rd and 7 or longer defense since the merger. I mean, don't you remember that year? We got them in 3rd and 9. We got them in 3rd and 14. And then somebody's wide open with no pass rush pressure. None. All right, stay on hold. Kevin, Billy, Mark, Jonesy. We've got a line open again if you want to jump on. It's a 2-part question. Who's the player that divides the fan base the most on the current roster? And who's the player all-time franchise history that's divided the fan base the most? Also want to mention that Window Nation right now is offering 50% off of everything you buy. Any window style, and they've got 1,500 plus to choose from. No matter what you buy between now and the end of the month, you're going to get 50% off. You're going to pay half price. Add to that, no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest charged for 2 full years. 2 full years, no interest, no payments. You get the benefit of lower air conditioning bills in the summertime, lower heating bills in the wintertime, and you're not paying anything until the year 2028. Window Nation offers incredible service in addition to their product and their offer. They have over 45,000 5-star reviews on social media, and Forbes ranked Window Nation the #1 window installation company in America. If you've been thinking about new windows, all I ask is just give Window Nation a chance to come out and give you a free in-home estimate. To schedule that estimate, 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. Did you guys see this story about Tyreek Hill? He says 10 months after surgery, he still has no power in his recovering left leg. He's 2 surgeries over the last 10 months. And we had read right recently, Max, I think you gave it to me a few weeks ago, that there were people reporting that Tyreek Hill probably won't play in 2026.
Yeah.
So he's 32. So, if you had him on your short list of adding to the wide receiver room, he's not on that list anymore. And I'll tell you what, I'll make a prediction right now. He's the 2027 comeback player of the year in Kansas City. There you go. Back to the phone lines, 301-230-0980. Players that the fan base have been divided over and are currently divided over. So I'm taking this from at Red Zone in the Lab on X. He threw out Ben Sinnott, Luke McCaffrey, Mikey Sandersstill. I like the fourth option. Everything we need is in the room. Divides the fan base. The people that say, we don't need anything else. Don't talk to me about Brandon Ayuk or Keenan Allen or Stephon Diggs. Everything we need is in the room. Yeah, I think that is definitely probably the most dividing of conversations. But all-time polarizing player, Kirk Cousins for me. And then certainly on the roster now, it's harder because a lot of these players we just don't know enough about. And I get where at Red Zone in the Lab was going with that. Yeah, I mean, I think Krosky Merritt has a lot of believers in him and a lot of people who think, yeah, he's not the answer. This, by the way, from Dwayne on Twitter, on X, all-time Heineke. To some people, he literally walked on water. To most who know anything about football, just a guy who competed hard but didn't have skills to be a starting quarterback. Now it's Frankie Louvu. Some fans feel he fell way off while others realized he played out of position most of the year. I should have mentioned that one because I am still a big believer in Frankie Louvu. And yet fans actually question whether or not there's a spot for him to be part of the, significant contributors at the linebacker position. And let's face it, the team could have, and they still could have extended him. He's an unrestricted free agent next year. And they have not extended him. Obviously, they did it with Tunsil early. All right, let's go to our guy, Kevin in Arlington. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
After thinking more about the question, and I think it's an interesting one, you'd have to say the Sonny Jurgensen, Billy Kilmer rivalry. And the irony was they're such dear friends, but the bumper stickers all over town.
Yeah.
I root for Washington and I like Sonny, or I root for Washington and I like Billy. That was an incredible many-year rivalry among fans as to who should be under center starting the game. I definitely remember it. That, to me, that's the all-time one, although I get totally why you are saying for you it's Cousins. I understand. We were totally polarized over the Griffin versus Cousins early on, or just keeping
Cousins sign him or not sign him. That was really when it became, polarizing.
That's right, Kevin.
I mean, we really never had the irony of Kirk versus RG3 is it never really was anywhere near as intense a conversation over versus whether to sign him long term or not.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right about that. And that was the issue was, and again, I think people were not yet comfortable with the fact that, hey man, that's the market. You got to pay the market. I think really the NFL had to go through Cousins to get to a point where, hey, that's the market. This is what quarterbacks get.
You know what? And there's truth in that. He was really an absolute trailblazer in many ways, signing the first fully guaranteed contract after going through 2 franchise tags. Yes. And choosing and being okay with the 2 franchise tags.
Absolutely. As for current roster, to me, I think it's not on the roster. I think people are divided about what we have upstairs, and that being whether it's Adam Peters are divided over, or if it's whether Dan Quinn's really the guy. I mean, the thing about Dan Quinn is, I mean, it's all or nothing because he's fired his coordinators 2 years in. So that's going to play out, and he'll either be right about these guys, and I'm very confident that he's made good decisions in both. But I just feel like in my circles, there's division over those two guys. Are they the right guy long term?
Yeah, I don't feel the division over Adam Peters. And if you told me that there's division on both, I would say that there's much more division on Dan Quinn than Adam Peters.
I think
so
people
you agree
are
with that.
Adam. Just my point on that is people are like, we had 6 picks in the top 100 in 2024, and what do we have to show for it other than our good man JD5? And that's harsh. And there have been players from that top 6 that have played well at times. I'm just saying, I think there's still some concern of, are we picking the right players? And we'll find that out too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I hate relitigating the Adam Peters first off season, but I still, how I feel. I still think it's way too early. I think this time next year we can evaluate the 24 draft. But the fact of the matter is that there's a very good possibility that 3 of those top 6 players drafted in 2024 will be starters in 2026. Jaden Daniels, Sandra Still, and Coleman. And then, by the way, McCaffrey, at worst case, as the number 1 kickoff returner. And let me just say that, that's a very good return on 6 players. Now, yes, the 6 players are through the 3rd round. They're in the top 3 rounds. So you better hit on 3 of the 6. It can't be a 2 out of 6 in the first 3 rounds. It's got to be at least a 3 out of 6. But that's where they're going to land more likely than not. Now, will Coleman be really good? Will Sanders still be really good? Will McCaffrey turn into something? And by the way, I didn't even mention Newton's and Sinnott, who are still on the team and may end up being significant contributors. So I think it's just early on 24.
I agree it's too early. I'm just saying people are antsy.
I know. I get that, but they weren't antsy after the 24 season. They're antsy when it was way too premature. Now they're antsy because last year, unfortunately, the team was decimated with injuries and had a bad season, and it happens. Yeah. We'll see what happens. Look, Kevin, this is a big year. It's a big year for a lot of reasons.
I'm excited about it. I think we could do well. If we're healthy, I'm excited about this year.
Me too. Let's go to Steve in Houston. What's up, my goon?
What's up, my thug? I'm feeling good, man. Celebrated a birthday yesterday, so it was all good.
Happy birthday. Belated.
Appreciate you, my dude. I would say, man, in the past, definitely I'm with you on Kirk Cousins. And I think even more recent than Kirk Cousins in the past, it had to be Chase Young. I mean, I think the whole fan base.
Yep.
Yeah, Max and I, we talked about that a little bit before when he screened the calls. Yeah, because, when Chase Young was here, you figure everyone was just focused on number 99. Every play, every second, like, when is this dude going to be the quote-unquote generational talent? But that's in the past. Now, currently, I would say I think there's some heat around maybe Kinlaw a little bit.
Really?
Javon, a little bit. I think the first 2-3 games.
He had a good season. I mean, he was one of the few. He and Dorrance Armstrong had good seasons before Armstrong got hurt.
Yeah, I think Kinlaw's the best of his season was the first quarter of the season, but it felt like afterwards, those first 3-4 games, it felt like a lot of complaints was coming about him, with the contract and the expectation.
I think there's more division over Duran than there is Kinlaw. A lot more.
I think people have kind of given up on the Duran thing. I think it's kind of, if he's re-signed or not, I think that's over with now with him. That's kind of in the rearview mirror. I don't think there's a lot of division, and I say that because, to have the division, are there a lot of yay versus nay? I think it's more on the name. I don't think people really care at this point.
I think you might be right, and I think the other part of it is if Duran goes out and has a big year, there's a history then that says he only has really good seasons during contract seasons, and that would be concerning to sign him to anything more than a short-term extension. Rather than him hitting free agency, which if he has a big year, he'll go ahead and hit free agency. Remember, Duran is still only 28 years old. Is he he's still 28, I think.
He's still 20. He's not in his 30s yet?
No.
Let me ask you this one.
Duran's 29. He just turned 29 in May, end of May.
Oh, okay, let's stay on the D-line. Is there more division with Johnny Newton? Where would you rate that?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's interesting, but basically going back to what Kevin said, it's like we're taking the 2024 draft, and that's what this guy at Red Zone in the Labs, basically hit you with. Sinnott, McCaffrey, Sanders still. So you can throw Newton into the mix too. And it's like when you get picked in the second round and even into the third round, there are some expectations, and when you haven't met those expectations, the fan base can become divided. So I hear you on that. Yeah, Newton would be in that mix. Agreed.
Got you. All right, Goon.
All right. See you, Thug. Steve in Houston, always one of my favorites. Billy in Chantilly, probably once. Hold on. Before we start, let me just read a quick tweet because this will give you fair warning. From Skins Fanatic 31. I'll start listening again when camp opens and you stop babbling on about the blanking World Cup. So no soccer talk with you today, please. Trying to keep listeners.
Hey, World Cup's over. We're talking Commanders football here. Kevin, let's do role play. You're Joe Gibbs. I'm Bobby Bethard. I walk into your office at the start of the season and say, "Hey, Joe, our starting quarterback needs every Tuesday off this season. He won't be at the headquarters here." That's Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins needs every Tuesday off in a 17-week season to rest and for emotional stability.
Well, hold on.
How are you going to win a championship?
Hey,
with
Billy. This has been overblown over the years. You know why, right? Do you know what the day off for every player on the team is during the regular season? It's Tuesday. Now, do quarterbacks around the league take every Tuesday off? They don't take every Tuesday off. A lot of quarterbacks end up being in with the OC. Some quarterbacks take some of those days off, but you are correct. Kirk always felt like he was at his best taking that Tuesday off with the rest of the team. But just understand that is the normal day off for the entire team. They don't practice on Tuesday. They're not in the building on Tuesday unless you have commitments to injury rehab. Continue, please.
Well, that sounds like the formula for 0 championships. I can't imagine Joe Theismann taking.
Well, you know what?
0.
The formula works for him because he's got 0 championships. Yes.
Well, yeah. Listen, if I had his bank account, I might take the same approach. So,
Yeah.
There's something to be said for all those.
No one
zeros.
ever accused him of not having great work ethic. Let's put it at that. No one ever had a problem with it anywhere he was because he was the most prepared and the most professional in the locker room on every team he was with. So continue and focus in on the question, if you will.
Kurt would say, enough about Kurt. Let's talk about Kurt. I think
he never said that. No,
Yeah,
he never.
that
That was RG3. Yeah, enough about RG3. Let's talk more about. The line. By the way, Billy, is enough about you. Let's talk about me. All right, go ahead.
Well,
come on, man.
But I'm not
Pick it
Kurt.
up.
I'm Billy.
Yeah, I'm just saying that he's the opposite of that.
On this Adam Peters thing, I think there's more of a fan pushback on it than you think there is. I don't think Cliff was the right offensive coordinator. I think he did make a good move.
What does that have to do with Peters?
Peters, yeah. What did I
What
say?
is that? What does
Peters.
Cliff Kingsbury have to do with Peters? Quinn hired him.
Peters hired him.
No, Quinn did. I mean, they both did.
Kevin.
But Quinn was the leader on his staff. Quinn got the calls on his staff in year one.
Well, I'll just say this. I'm not a Peters fan. I would love to see. Somebody mentioned Jay Gruden today on your calls, and if we had Jay Gruden as our offensive coordinator with Jaden Daniels, we'd probably score 150 touchdowns this year. Gruden and Daniels be a phenomenal pairing.
I think you're right about that. I think it's the first thing you've been right about on this call.
But Adam, the Terry negotiation contract last year completely nuked the season. It nuked it. You had your starting star wide receiver on the sidelines throughout training camp. And the reason that happened because of Peter's massive ego. That's why it happened. He just had to be right. And sometimes you have to hold your nose and bring a player in of Terry's quality, regardless in some guardrails of what the price is.
Okay. Now you're getting to something that I actually will agree with, that I think the fan base was divided on the way that Adam Peters and company handled the Terry McLaurin negotiation, because it was divided. And we sat here every day. There were people that said, they're doing the right thing. And there were people that said, get it over with. In terms of nuking the season, the Hiroshima Nagasaki bombs were when the quarterback only played in 4 games out of 17. That didn't nuke the season. The lack of their best players on their team playing much of the season, the quarterback led by the quarterback, that's what nuked the season. All right. Anything else, Billy?
If you had Terry in camp all year, the offense would have been.
The quarterback wouldn't have gotten hurt.
That we wouldn't have had our quarterback.
Dorrance Armstrong wouldn't have gotten hurt.
That's right.
Austin Eckler wouldn't have gotten hurt.
That's right.
Noah Brown wouldn't have gotten hurt. Want me to just keep going down the list of starters week one that didn't play, all because Terry's contract got protracted? Come on, man.
Yes.
Let's go to Jamal. Jamal, go ahead. The question's 2-part. Who's the player on the roster right now that's dividing the fan base? And all-time franchise, who's the most polarizing player, the one that divided the fan base the most? For me, it's Kirk. In terms of polarizing and dividing the fan base more than any other player. Jamal, go ahead.
So Kevin, it's going to be tough to beat your Kurt answer because that's possibly the correct one. However, I know you remember this. Remember when we were doing well in the 2000s, we had a guy by the name of Brad Johnson, and for some reason, we decided to give a guy by the name of Jeff George the starting job. I vividly remember how that split the fan base. Like, you had certain people who were telling me how great Jeff George was and he's the best talent I've ever seen. And I'm looking like, Brad Johnson literally was winning games. Like, he took us to the playoffs. Like, what the hell are we doing here? And you know how that story went. He went on to Tampa Bay to win a Super Bowl. And we, as a fan base who remember that, we haven't felt right about that. That was probably when I realized Dan Snyder was not like that incident right there was when I realized, okay, yeah, Dan is not a great owner. So I'll say that all the time, but your answer about Kirk is probably the correct one. As far as right now, that was a tough one. I went with Deron Payne initially. However, the more I thought about it, I had to go with Terry. And the reason why is Terry is because we can't seem to decide if he's an elite receiver or not in his fan base. Like, and I'm sure you
that's true, but
maybe a fan.
Right. But I think dividing or polarizing is positive versus negative, that contrast. And with Terry, it's positive versus less extremely positive versus just positive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So with that, then I'll go with Payne then. Like, I would say Deron Payne is the guy where some people think he's a guy who's a guy, and I think he's just, a person who makes a few plays a season. And
I mean, look, it's been that way recently. I've always been a huge Deron fan, and kind of looking forward to see what he's got this year in a new scheme, etc. Real quickly, though, thanks for the call, Jamal. Jeff George, I don't think was here long enough to have for us to have been divided over. But, Vin told the story on the air with me before, just how when he had to go to Norv to tell Norv that Dan was signing Jeff George, it was the answer from Norv was, I'll never play him. Well, of course, Dan forced him to play him at one point. He had a couple of decent games. He could sling it. He could really throw it. But remember, that leadership stuff, it's overrated, as Jeff George once said. All right, I see everybody on hold. We'll do this for another segment. Stay with us. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. All right, let's go to G. G, give me the player on the current roster the fans are most divided over, and then all-time, franchise-wise, the player that divided the fan base the most.
All time is a whole bunch of them, but the first one that's playing right now is become Jaden Daniels, because even with all the people that support Jaden Daniels, you got a lot of people staying in the background with the narrative going on that he can't stay healthy with what happened last year. A lot of people rooting for him not to be healthy. A lot of people rooting for Drake May and Caleb Williams to have better careers than Jaden Daniels. I don't care what nobody say. There's a lot of people that feel that way, especially like them dudes that be on the radio in the morning called the junkies, man. Half of them be rooting for Drake May over Jaden Daniels. So that's man, there's some Bama's, man. There's some Bama's, and they forget man, Jaden Daniels is the truth. And a lot of people is rooting for, like in that Super Bowl, a lot of people was rooting for Drake May to win just so they could call up Kevin Sheehan and say,
"What? Well, yeah. Well, we know some of those people, but I don't sense that the fan base is divided over Jaden Daniels.
See, but that's why a lot of people are sitting back, waiting, hoping that they can call up and say that. But
okay, well, but that's a little bit. Here's why that's a little bit different. Are there some people that have a vested interest in being right? I've been there. I know the feeling.
That's why
you want to be right.
That's why.
All right, but those people are, they actually have an audience and they want to be right, or maybe it's just among their friend group. But I don't sense that with Jaden. I do think you're right about one thing. I do think that there is a level of there's a group that's concerned about whether or not he can stay healthy versus a group that isn't. But I don't think there's a group that thinks they think he's not good versus those that think he is good. Who thinks he's not good? I mean, who with an opinion that you care about thinks he's not good?
That's the whole thing. I go against the majority's opinion. My opinion be the minority in mine, because like Deron Payne and John Allen, I got tired of hearing John Allen is so great for the locker room. He's such a culture guy. Man, he was putting up regular numbers.
That was a really good impersonation of some white guy that calls the station. Gee, that was well done. But why did you just break away from Jaden Daniels in the question I asked you? I don't think that there's what?
I'm not delusional. Sheehan.
I'm not either. I don't think.
You just said it. It's a lot of people have a vested interest in rooting for them to be right. And if this is your team, I will be wrong 100 damn times.
I know, but okay, hold on. All I'm asking you is, other than the people that want to be right, okay? Do you really think that there's great division among people who think Jaden Daniels is good versus people who don't think he's good? I don't know one person that doesn't think he's good.
That's not my thing. I'm saying that they're rooting for, and they think Drake May, like with Drake May. You get what I'm saying?
Give me all time. Who's your all time?
Because Jaden is never going to be revealed, because we're going 13-4 next year, and we're going to win the Super Bowl. So you won't hear from them detractors. But,
right, of course. I still don't hear from the Heineke and the Sam Howell people, who screamed at me for saying we shouldn't draft a quarterback and we've got our quarterback and we should build around him. They always that happens all the time in this business.
Yeah, I was a Deron Payne guy over John Allen.
Me too.
Billy from Chantilly just called.
We were wrong about that.
Everybody talks about. Deron Payne is better than John Allen.
Deron Payne's more talented than John Allen.
Okay, but we got the season, and he plays well in contract years. So show out Deron Payne and shut these people up, and have them talk about you only play well on contract years. I'll live with it. But Billy from Chantilly just called with a big reverence for Jay Gruden's offensive mind. Yeah, he knows offensive football. But he's not no leader of men, and he wouldn't be good for Jaden because people don't respect Jay. And that's my opinion, Sheehan. That's my opinion. And we ain't got to go do a deep
I think
dive
football
on that.
people respect Jay a lot more than you probably think. But yeah, I mean, look, there'd be a lot of good fits for Jaden Daniels. When you have a quarterback with that level of talent and skill, you can make a lot of guys look really good calling plays, and hopefully he does that for David Blau. The Caitlin Clark thing, though, you're with me on that, right? 45 and 29 minutes. That's obscene.
Sheehan, you said Klay Thompson. You seen what I sent you.
I know. I read it.
You said, let me look up how many assists he had. I would guess he had 0 because he was just cooking.
He had one.
He
had one.
He had one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, 11 dribbles. Me and you done played basketball enough. Caitlin Clark is great. I am a fan, but she dribbles 11 times in one possession.
I mean, there's not a lot of movement in that offense. If you watch, I watched it last night. All right, man, I got to roll. Stick around, Jonesy, John, Jay, Dominic. We'll do this one more segment because I think, John, you've got one that no one's mentioned, and Jay, you've got one that hasn't been mentioned that I both think totally work as far as this question goes. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, all of our football coverage on the Team 980 is presented by Xfinity. Score the most reliable Wi-Fi. One price, 5 years, guaranteed. Xfinity. Imagine that. All right, John in Fort Washington is going to answer the question of the player that most divides the fan base currently and the player all time that most divided the fan base. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Kevin, I don't have anybody for today, but definitely one comparable to Kirk Cousins is Joe Theismann.
Yeah.
The regime change between him and Sonny, and to me, just the pressure that was on him to perform the way those two guys performed is just it was definitely him.
John, you're so right. Like, I still think Kirk, to a certain extent, is right there with Joe T. But here's why Joe T divided the fan base. He didn't divide the fan base when we got far enough away from Billy and Sonny. But in those early days, 76, 77, 78, when Billy was still on the roster, oh my God, the division over Theismann. There were so many fans that loved him, thought he was talented, he was mobile. We hadn't had a mobile quarterback ever. And then others thought, oh, he can't throw it. He's, the word to describe him, it's such a 70s word, was a hot dog. That's what he was. And Joe's admitted this. Joe was a great team guy, don't get me wrong, but publicly, Joe was in love with Joe. And he was definitely a polarizing player in the aftermath of Billy and Sonny in particular. Now, by the time we got to Super Bowl 17 and his MVP year that followed in 83, the whole fan base loved Joe and knew how great he was. But yeah, in those early days when he first started to get starts, 100% right.
Very good.
Thanks, John. Let's go to Jay in Reston. Jay, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, you had mentioned Mike Shanahan earlier. I'm going to go with Kyle Shanahan. I think there was
such a good one.
lot of divisiveness when Kyle was the offensive coordinator. Half the fans felt like he was just a complete bum Nepo hire, and the other half of the fan base, which I was included in, thought he was brilliant, right? Like, he was a brilliant offensive mind. But I just remember so much talk about, him just, oh, this guy's a bum. I've had arguments with my friends about how, like, half of us hated him, half of us loved him. And I mean, I think the ones that thought he was good, I think we were proven right now. But at the time, he was definitely divided the fan base.
Jay, and thanks for the call. I'm echoing somehow off your phone, but that's such a good one. Now, that's not a player and it's not a head coach or GM. It was an assistant coach here. I got in so many arguments with people I work with at the station who thought it was a nepotism hire. 100% people weren't paying attention to what he had done with Matt Schaub in Houston. I mean, Matt Schaub, right? What, a 4th or 5th round pick out of UVA? He threw for nearly 5,000 yards under Kyle and went to a Pro Bowl under Kyle in Houston. Kyle had already come to Washington with league people thinking that he had the bona fides. Like, he had already proven himself to be an excellent offensive coordinator because he had done it in Houston with really a very average quarterback in Matt Schaub. And remember, didn't they get to the playoffs a couple times with Matt Schaub? I'd have to go look at that. Matt Schaub. No, I guess they missed out on the playoffs at 9-7. Okay. And then obviously he could have stayed in Houston. He wanted to come coach with his dad. If Kyle had been on the market truly after 2009, this is what people back then didn't understand. There would have been a line to hire him as an offensive coordinator. That's how good he was in Houston with Matt Schaub and company. And he chose Washington because his dad was here and he wanted to coach with his dad. He had many opportunities in that particular moment. Dominic, go ahead.
Hey, Kev, thanks for the call.
Sure.
For me, I think currently right now, I think it's Krosky Merritt.
Yeah, I think a little bit,
I don't think it's the fans. Yeah, I don't think it's the fans. I think it's even just the organization itself. I think they were so high on him coming into the season thinking we finally got our lead back. And I think as the time went on, they started to realize maybe this guy isn't what we thought he was. And I think that's why also you brought in Rashad, you drafted the kid from Penn State. So I think for right now, he'd be my pick for a current player.
That's a good one. I'm going to let you get to your part two, but I'm going to interject real quickly. I actually don't think that they knew for sure what they had when they drafted him. I think they liked a lot of what they saw, and because he really didn't play a college season, remember he was ruled ineligible in his last year, they feel like they got him at a really good value. But I don't think they really knew what they had. And I think that during the course of the year, there were moments in which they really understood that, hey, there's something to this guy, but B, there's a lot of the game he still has to develop. He's got to develop, more patience as a runner. He's got to hold on to the football. He's got to become better at pass blocking. But I think there's still some belief in him. As it relates to the fan base, I kind of sense that there are people that believe that Krosky Merritt's got a chance to be a star in the NFL. And then there are people that feel like, man, we really needed Jeremiah Love. We really needed a running back in this offseason. I don't know how it'll play out. I think the guy's got some talent, no doubt. And I think the zone run scheme of David Blau is going to fit him pretty well. So I'm excited to see what he has. But I also was always a bit of a quiet fan of Rachaad White's running style. I thought he had great vision, and I think he might be better than our fans think. So go ahead. Who's your part two?
I would agree. And then, I think, and this is going to the time being, I don't think anybody could top yours or Kirk Cousins all time, but what would you say about Jason Campbell back in, when he was drafted? Joe Gibbs drafted him, and I think one analysis, back in the time, he said, he might have just drafted his next Doug Williams.
Right.
And you look at, him, they were saying
that's what they said. He traded into the first 17. Round.
Correct. They traded for him, so.
Yeah, they traded back into the first round and picked him right after Aaron Rodgers was selected.
Correct. And I think, as time went on, the fans started saying, oh, no, this guy ain't no Doug Williams. What were they thinking at the time? So, even though it wasn't polarizing, I think you could make an argument for Jason Campbell.
Yeah. Jason's whole demeanor didn't lend itself to being, a polarizing figure. With Kirk, you could say the same about Kirk's personality, but it was the contracts that, and the franchise tags that really created the environment for that. Jason was such a nice person, such a soft-spoken guy. Everybody liked Jason, but he had limitations. There's no doubt about it. And I think, going back to that time, remember it was 2005 and it was Brunell was the starter, but he was older. They obviously had Patrick Ramsey, and Joe was trying to draft, his next Doug Williams or his next Mark Rippon, because Rip, remember, spent those years on basically injured reserve and didn't play for a few years. When he first got the chance late in 2006, his second year, I guess so. To a certain degree, there were believers in Jason and there were non-believers, but his whole personality didn't lend itself to him being polarizing as a player.
Sure.
But thanks for that, Dominic. Appreciate it. Let's go to Athen in Annapolis. Athen, finish it up for us.
I don't have an all-time player, but I have an all-time situation, and that's the Champ Bailey-Clinton Portis trade that I think people were very divided about, and that we gave up that second-round pick in that. I just felt ripped off about that because I'm a huge Clinton Portis fan, but not so much a fan of the trade. So I think that's a pretty divisive one. I think the player, though, on the team right now, there's some division about, is McLaurin, because who's going to be the succession plan for him? They're not going to pay him his cap number next year, so they're either going to have to extend him or rework it or get it worked out somehow. So while Terry's not elite, he's still very good. I don't think Terry is as good as like a Mike Evans or anything, but I think he's going to be a long, durable receiver. but he's just not elite. So I think that it's like we have him for this year, but what is the succession plan, or is he going to be here next year? I think it's something to think about.
So it's a good call, and I appreciate it as always, Athen. So number one on Terry, real quickly, that is the fan base is divided over, is he elite or is he just really good? I think he's just really good. I don't think he's elite. I think he's somewhere between 14 and 18, 14 and 20. I don't think he's, in the top 10 or close to, top 5. That's a little bit different than I think sort of the idea of don't think he's any good, think he's great. Don't like him, love him kind of a thing. Because everybody likes Terry. Everybody likes Terry. I don't know one fan that doesn't actually legitimately like what Terry's brought to this franchise on the field and off of it. Now, back to what you said about the Bailey Portis trade. It was really, look, for me, I didn't feel about Dan Snyder and that first full off season of 2000 the way some have claimed to have felt in the moment. I thought it was exciting to get Deion Sanders and to get Bruce Smith and Mark Carrier. I was not a big fan of the signing of Jeff George. I was a big fan of the signing of Deion Sanders, and I didn't see what was coming at that moment. For me, the moment that it became obvious. Well, during that 2000 season, we were starting to hear the stories about what a bad guy he was. The Mike Nolan vanilla ice cream on the desk, the going in and ripping Norv in the locker room after a loss to the Cowboys in front of the rest of the team. Stories were coming out about him that indicated that he was a tyrant, that he was not a great guy. So we already had that. But when he cut Marty loose after 1 year, that was when I was like, whoa. What are you doing? This guy just took Tony Banks and Kent Graham and literally a ragtag group to 8 wins in their final 11 games and nearly made the postseason after starting 0-5. Are you out of your mind? I still think football-wise, that's the worst decision he ever made. And that was a heads up. But, man, when we got to Joe's first off season, or Joe's second off season, and they traded when they traded Champ Bailey for Clinton Portis, and they gave up a second-round pick. Every NFL fan, even back then, knew, no. Corners are much harder to find than running backs. It's our team that should be getting the pick back from Denver, not us giving up the pick with Champ Bailey. A lot of people didn't even want that trade to begin with. There's a lot of stuff around that trade that has been talked about over the years. Champ Bailey recently talked about it. He wanted out. He thought Snyder was he kind of sensed that the franchise was not a very sharp or classy franchise and one that would probably not win very often. So it was the best thing that ever happened to him. But I do remember how I felt about that, thinking, oh my God, how stupid is our front office? Do they not know that corners are more valuable and harder to find than running backs? There's a big difference in the position. And I do remember the fan base being divided over it, but I think you really had to be in the weeds in terms of really understanding the NFL or really enjoying the NFL and trades and compensation and stuff to really know how bad of a trade that was, even though Clinton was a great player. Like, I had no problem getting Clinton Portis back, but we should have gotten a second-round pick back, or maybe more than that, for a corner of Champ Bailey's capability. All right. LeBron James has not yet signed with his new NBA team, whoever that's going to be. And there are reports as to why he hasn't signed. And some of those reports say it's because he's waiting on the Wizards to do something. More on that next. So LeBron James is making everybody wait on his decision. Look, this isn't 2010, the decision, although that took some time because remember, Dwayne Wade was there, but they needed to, add a third wheel, which was Chris Bosh. 2014, when he made the decision to go back to Cleveland to join Kyrie Irving, he was waiting on something. He was waiting on a commitment that they would trade the first overall pick for Kevin Love, which they did. And then in 2018, when he signed with the Lakers, he knew that coming the next offseason was a chance at Anthony Davis, which worked out. LeBron and his previous decisions have always been based on picking a team that's got a plan around what he wants. So Kevin O'Connor, NBA senior analyst with Yahoo Sports, wrote that LeBron James is waiting for kind of a plan to come together that he would like. And the two plans that are at the top of his preference list are a team willing to trade for Anthony Davis to play side by side with him, or a team willing to trade for Kyrie Irving to put side by side with him. The Kyrie Irving, situation might be in Cleveland because remember, the teams that LeBron's been linked to, Philly's already got a point guard in Tyrese Maxey. Golden State has obviously a guy who handles the ball a lot and scores a lot in Steph Curry. Even places like Minnesota, they acquired LaMelo Ball. Then, if anybody's been thinking about the Knicks, they've got Jalen Brunson. Miami's different for sure. Cleveland needs a point guard. I don't consider James Harden to be I guess he is technically a point guard. By the way, just as an aside, why would anybody of LeBron's caliber at this point in his career want to play on a team with James Harden? You're never going to win with James Harden as anywhere near your top two players. Now, you could say that with LeBron on the team, maybe Harden becomes the third best player. I don't know. Donovan Mitchell 1, LeBron 2, Harden 3. Harden is just, he's the most joyless player in sports to watch for my money. But Kevin O'Connor gets to the situation with Anthony Davis. He writes, I first reported 3 Sundays ago that the Warriors pursued trading Jimmy Butler for Anthony Davis to lure LeBron James to the Bay Area. Thus far, the Warriors have been unable to reach a deal with the Wizards, who are signaling that they are more than happy to keep Davis. So the dream of running back the bubble title, the 2020 bubble title, has problems with it. Will Dawkins has mentioned to several people, including on this show, that he wants Anthony Davis in D.C., and we're going to keep him here. And he's been a part of the workouts in the offseason. He was out watching the Summer League and the A.J. Debonsa debut, and Anthony Davis is fine sticking around. And keep in mind, Washington bought low on Anthony Davis. And they bought low on Anthony Davis because he was hurt. So they don't feel, if there was an interest in dealing Anthony Davis, the problem is now's not the time to trade him. He hasn't played in forever. He's got to go out and show through the first half of the season before the trade deadline, this upcoming season, that he's still Anthony Davis so that the Wizards could get back a haul for him. Jimmy Butler, as part of a deal with Butler coming off a serious injury at his age, along with a lot of picks, is not a deal the Wizards should take. The rookie from Michigan, along with a lot of picks in Jimmy Butler, and Butler then moved where else maybe. So LeBron's waiting for Anthony Davis or Kyrie Irving. That is the report before he makes the decision. I don't think the Wizards are trading Anthony Davis. Now, you could say to LeBron, whoa, you really want to play with Anthony Davis that bad? Well, what about coming to Washington and playing with Anthony Davis? Have we done this already? I feel like we've talked about doing this, but we haven't done it, Max. And that is LeBron James. Yes or no?
I think we did a couple weeks ago.
You do?
I think. Or either that or we discussed it off air. I can't remember. But let's,
All right, well,
we got to do it again because we have more
material
change.
Let me ask the question this way. If I told you one of the two happened, which one would you prefer? LeBron signs in Washington and plays with Anthony Davis here, or Washington trades Anthony Davis for something that's fair compensation-wise, and Anthony Davis plays with LeBron elsewhere. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. So you have two choices. The third choice, by the way, is the leader in the clubhouse, but I'm not offering you that choice, which is LeBron signs elsewhere and Anthony Davis stays here. But if I told you that either the Wizards dealt Anthony Davis to a team that LeBron James joined, or LeBron James joined the Wizards and teamed up with Trae Young, Anthony Davis, AJ DeBonsa, Will Riley, etc., which of the two would you prefer? 301-230-0980. For me, it's easy. I'd much prefer LeBron come here and Anthony Davis stay. Even if the Wizards got a haul back for Anthony Davis and then obviously didn't have to pay him, next year or during the season at some point or next month. Because I want them to win now. I want a competitive basketball team now. I don't want to wait another 2, 3, 4 years for all of the young guys to come together, for it to either work with AJ DeBonsa becoming the next league superstar or not. I want 2026, 2027 to be a season in which they're winning in the low to mid 40s, and they're either qualifying for play-in or the top 6 in the East. And I already think that the roster they have, this is contingent on Anthony Davis playing and being healthy. Because I've said this before, if Anthony Davis isn't healthy and doesn't play 65-plus games, the Wizards are going to improve their win total, but not by enough for it to matter. They're not going to be a playoff team. You don't get led by a rookie. Cooper Flagg was the rookie of the year last year, and Dallas won 26 games. So even if AJ DeBonsa as a rookie is ready to be a really good player and puts together a really incredible rookie of the year season, without a true star, and Anthony Davis is that when he plays and he's healthy, the Wizards will improve marginally win total wise. Actually, because they had so few, they'll win 28, 29, 30 games, somewhere around there. You hope they do. Like you hope that there's more development from George and Koulibaly and Sarr and Riley and Trey Johnson, etc. So I don't want to wait for, the 28-win season next year where the young guys get a little bit better and AJ DeBonsa looks good and maybe wins Rookie of the Year, to then the 2027, 2028 season where they go to 36, 37 wins and they're actually pushing the play-in as the players get a little bit more mature and a little bit older. And then finally in 2028, 2029, they, pull off another trade with some of their young players, bring in another star player, and there they are as a 47-win team, and they're a 5 seed or a 6 seed. I don't want to wait that long. I understand the risk in moving forward with Anthony Davis. Of course I do. I follow the NBA. I know that this guy is fragile. There's no doubt about it. He is fragile. But if he isn't fragile, and some seasons he hasn't been fragile, it's not that he gets injured every single season, just most. But if he can play 70 games, 65 games, and be a force like he's been in his career with what they have surrounding him, That's a 44-45 win team next year and a potential 5 or 6 seed with a legitimate playoff series, best of 7 for the first time since 2017. Actually, they had the loss to the 76ers with Westbrook and Beal. Didn't really count. Didn't feel like it counted. They went through the play-in, if you recall. So that's the question at 301-230-0980. Your choice. LeBron joins AD in Washington, or AD gets traded for a really healthy, fair compensation package and joins LeBron somewhere else. Which of those two would you prefer and why? 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com. So Kevin O'Connor from USA Today, from Yahoo Sports, is reporting that LeBron is waiting before he signs with a team for both Kyrie Irving or Anthony Davis to get traded to a team that he can join so he can team up with one of them. So the question, and we've put it out there at 301-230-0980. It's also our poll of the day driven by Waldorf Honda. It all starts with a click, waldorfhonda.com. And that is, would you rather the Wizards sign LeBron to join AD here or trade Anthony Davis to join LeBron elsewhere? You can vote on that poll. I just reposted it, so you can follow me or go to @Kevin Sheehan DC and see that poll available for you to vote right now. You can also get it at Team 980. I would rather have LeBron come here. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that the odds-on favorite, and it's a heavy favorite, is that Anthony Davis plays here without a contract extension and has to prove something during the course of the season. That's what I think will happen. I think that is by far and away the odds-on favorite. But the reason I would love it if LeBron joined here, fourfold. Number one is I don't want to wait another 2 or 3 years before they're competitive and they're playing for playoff positioning and in the playoffs. Number two is Anthony Davis would be awfully motivated if LeBron came here. I think they have a good relationship. They won a title together. So that would be good. Number three, immediately relevant in the NBA. The Wizards would become a focused on team big time, like we haven't had in forever, for the most part. And then lastly, I think LeBron's still good enough. If he's your third best player, let's just say Trae Young, Anthony Davis, they're playing, they're healthy, and LeBron's in there. The Wizards over-under number, which I looked this up during the break, I was actually expecting it to still be pretty low, like in the low 30s. I saw 37.5. I thought I saw 36.5. They won 17 games last year. There are some expectations that the Wizards are going to be much better next year. That's not a big leap on an over bet to get you into the top 6 in the East. I mean, the East is, a little bit loaded, more so than it has been with obviously the Knicks and the Celtics, Pistons, Cavs, the top 4 from last year, the 76ers with the acquisition, the Raptors with Kawhi, the Heat with Giannis, the Pacers getting Tyrese Halliburton back. So the East, the Magic, who came on a little bit last year, Hornets, the same thing. But I think the Wizards with that group would definitely be in the mix for top 5 in the East and totally relevant. I don't think LeBron would want to come here, though. But which of the two would you choose? LeBron here or AD with LeBron elsewhere? Sign LeBron or trade Anthony Davis? And why? Max, what would your choice be here?
Honestly, going forward with how everything's shaped up, I want the Wizards to keep their young core intact, and I would like them to get them as much playing time and as much experience as they can get. So I would probably lean towards trading AD.
So that would be the one downside of bringing LeBron here is you're perhaps slowing the development of some of the young guys. By the way, most notably, AJ DeBonsa, because LeBron's not coming off the bench at small forward, right? So, now, could he play with LeBron? Of course. Let's start with Curtis. Curtis, if I told you one of the two happened, which one would you prefer? Trading AD to join LeBron elsewhere or bringing LeBron here to join Anthony Davis?
Really, neither one. This LeBron junk got to stop. I ain't like when he was young. I mean, he gonna come mess with the development of the team. After they want to go, he can go too. I mean, these two dinosaurs trying to pass stats and stuff. Enough is enough with this stuff. Keep the core together. And the Wizards was better last year than people think. They gave away games so they could tank. They could have won these in 27 30 games last year. If you watch the games last year, they gave a lot of games way late by benching players, not playing the next game and all that. LeBron, he need to retire. Enough is enough with this crap. Thank you.
Well, let me just say, when they had C.J. McCollum, they were a bit competitive. And then down the stretch, they were basically giving up 140 to 150 a night. They sucked. Now, as far as the young core, I get that. Okay, I understand that. But there's no guarantee that this young core is going to develop into a contending core. And if it does, we got to wait another 2, 3, 4 years for it. I don't want to wait 2, 3, 4 years. Mark and Largo, go ahead. Where you been?
Well, hey, that's exactly what Max said. Sorry I didn't call about the other doing some other things, but I'll be.
You don't have to apologize. I just said,
that.
where you been? I mean, I
did
care about you. I want to make sure you're okay.
And we did like 2 hours of Commanders calls, Mark. I was curious as to your opinion.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I'll be back on the Commanders. Don't worry about that. Look, I remember 25 years ago, and you do too, Kevin. Maybe Max don't, but Kevin, you definitely
sure don't.
25 years ago.
I know.
It was a circus with the Jordan, with Michael Jordan and the Jordan factors. Okay, let's call it what it was. LeBron, I agree with the last call. I think LeBron does need to go and needs to retire, to be honest. I think Anthony Davis, I would trade him away and get youth in back. I would trade Anthony Davis to play with LeBron so we can get youth back. Kevin, I disagree with you as far as building blocks. I think the biggest issue this team needs to address is coach. I don't know how the hell Brian Key could still have a job. I know he was developing, but I think if this team is going to get somewhere, I think you have to seriously consider looking at getting a coach that teaches defenses. I mean, I think that's.
I don't even know how you'd evaluate Brian Keefe at this point.
That may be true. I think this is the first year you're going to have with him.
Of course, they're trying to win this year, so we'll evaluate him this year. He was developing players the last couple of years.
That's fair. And that's fair. Okay, I have no problem with that. But my thing is, you have a big three right now with your young core. And your big three is Czar, Trey Johnson, and AJ. Okay.
Sorry, the player that you think is better than Wembanyama.
He's a better post-up player than Wemby right now. I will continue.
That's not what you said before. You haven't talked about post-up comparisons. You've just said that Alex Sarr is a better player and will become a better player than Victor Wembanyama.
I think he will.
Okay.
I think he will.
Yeah, stick with it.
I think he will. So anyway, I'm gonna stick with it, and I'm aware. If he don't, he don't. But I think he will. I think those core can take you somewhere if you let them play. But I do think if they get off to a bad start, I think Keith has to go. But I would trade Davis and let him play with LeBron.
Okay. I mean, we're talking about this franchise has not been. I mean, truly
Kevin,
relevant.
No
even with
like
John, with John and Bradley,
I agree.
Mark does what he always does. Mark's back, everybody. Yeah, Mark, go ahead. It's your show. Really happy that you let me jump on with you. First time, long time. See you later. Get rid of him. I want to get Anthony on here before we have to say goodbye. We're talking about LeBron James, Anthony Davis, a little bit lesser extent, Trae Young, and a core of some promising young players. Do you know how much attention would be on our NBA team from not just the league and the league's fans around the world? There are probably countries that love the NBA that barely even know the Wizards exist. Anthony, LeBron with AD here or AD somewhere else with LeBron?
Man, this is a no-brainer. LeBron comes here. Between the three of them, injuries allotted for, this is a fifth seed or better team.
Yeah, I think so.
So,
with a lot of playoff experience on that roster.
Exactly. And the youngins learning along the way, along with getting playing time.
Right, playing in big games, meaningful games.
Because imagine you got three veterans. They're not going to be required to play 45 minutes a game. So you intermix the lineup. Brian gets rest, Trey gets rest, AD gets rest. So the narrative of the youngins being their growth being retarded is not necessarily true. And in my opinion, it would be totally asinine to trade AD right now because there's no value for him.
There's no value for him right now. None.
Exactly. What exactly do you expect to get back for him? Garbage. So why would you trade him? There's no benefit to him. So yeah, I'm taking LeBron coming here 7 days a week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And LeBron last year played the fewest number of minutes on average in his career at 33.2. And it would be kind of a similar thing because he would be mentoring. I mean, imagine A.J. DeBonsa with LeBron on the roster mentoring him.
Who better to learn from?
I know. And the thing that's so important about this coming season, which we both know LeBron's not going to end up here, but I think we both believe that AD is going to end up here because, like you said, they got him for basically a song. They're not going to trade him for a song 4 months later, 5 months later. That's stupid. He's got to prove something before they can get proper trade value back. If they decide to do that, it would be at the deadline. But the most important thing this upcoming season is the development environment has to change from tanking and your opponents not taking you seriously and you not even caring about looking at the standings to playing in meaningful basketball games where your opponent thinks and knows you're trying to win and also knows you're competitive and you've got games that matter. We've got to see what the Keyshawn Georges and the Alex Sars and the Trey Johnsons and the Will Rileys, what they look like when games are actually being played competitively with the goal being winning the game. It's different. It's different between the regular season team that's trying to win and the playoff team. There's a massive difference between regular season and playoffs in general. But what the Wizards have been doing, it's not the best developmental environment. They've got to change that. CJ,
right.
Finish it up for us. Go ahead.
Hey, CJ, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, CJ.
Hey, long time listener, first time caller. I've had the
thanks,
misfortune
CJ.
of being. Hey, thanks. I've had the misfortune of being a DC fan because I saw the Redskins win the Super Bowl when I was 13. So it's just been a curse. I'm in Jacksonville now, and the only thing more delusional than Jaguars fans is my own delusion every year.
Yeah.
For DC sports, but I'll start with this, which is that this brought me back to Michael Jordan and Kwame Brown. So we've already had old goats come in here and ruin the sheep. Also, I heard before that there's no value to trading AD now, but there could be value to trading him at the deadline.
Yes,
the value
I agree with that.
Of the value of Anthony Davis could very well be right now at a premium because LeBron wants him so much. So we may get something out of him.
You know what? I thought about that when Anthony and I were talking about it. That is definitely something that could boost the compensation package because LeBron wants him and they feel like they're AD away from winning a title or contending for a title. So it might be more than what you had to give up, to Dallas for him, but it's still not maximum value. He hasn't played in a while. That's why they were able to get him for what they got him for.
That is fair, but there's an additional nuance that I'd like to consider, which is that the games are inherently more competitive now because of the anti-tanking for the draft positioning.
Yeah, true.
So I think there's going to be an upward pressure on the youth now to deliver anyway. Also, this is kind of a difference between short-term thinking and long-term thinking like the RG3 Kirk Cousins, which is that right now, if we say, I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say that we're 60% of the way to being competitive. Would a one-year experiment ruin that and bring it down to 40%? So we have to start at 40 again? Or would it?
I don't think so. Do you?
Why? Again, I am just so ruined by the Michael Jordan, Kwame Brown
I know,
thing.
but that was a different organization. They had a different lead up to that. I mean, I think Christian Laettner was on that team. There were some veterans on that team that weren't great, to begin with. Who were the young players other than Kwame Brown that had a lot of promise? I mean, Brendan Haywood, maybe.
Brendan Haywood. Was there Courtney?
Courtney Alexander, the Virginia kid.
Yeah, there was Rip Hamilton.
Rip Hamilton. Good point. Rip Hamilton was a young player. That's true. That's
and then
true.
I understand the organization.
Although, to be fair, I don't know that I forget how I felt about Rip Hamilton in the moment. So I don't want to answer that. I almost forget how I felt about that team in general. Thanks, CJ, for the call. I got to run. We're up against a hard break, but an interesting topic nonetheless. I don't see how, even if it ended up being 1 year, the young players wouldn't benefit from having LeBron James on the team and AJ DeBonsa having LeBron in his rookie season. I just don't know how that wouldn't be a benefit, even if it didn't work out, if it came back to what the Wizards were with Michael Jordan playing, in 2001, 2002. All right. That'll do it for the day. Chris is next.